We're going to be painting this beautiful gold leaf today. We'll start with a sketch and I'll show you how we can use a gold foil texture that will take us a lot of the way there, and then we're going to add shadows and highlights to really bring it to life. So there's a link to the texture in the description below if you want to use the one that I'm using. Once you understand this sort of shading with layers and highlights, you can apply the same technique to really anything. So it's a great way to learn and explore, and I'm going to take you through it step by step so we can create it together today. Make sure to stick around for the end as well so I can show you how I ended up using these leaves in a bigger project. Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to start from scratch with a new canvas. So tap on the plus sign and then create new canvas icon in the top right corner. I'm going to create my canvas at 3000 by 3000 pixels, and I'm making sure that it's set to 300 dpi. So I always create my designs at 300 dpi at a minimum to ensure that the quality is good enough if I choose to print down the line. So now I'll just drag black from my color circle straight onto the canvas here, and that will fill that layer. I actually have a sketch here that I've made earlier, and as you can see, it's really loose and free flowing. You could sketch something similar out on your own, or just take a quick screen grab of this frame and paste it into Procreate and trace over it. It really doesn't need to be perfect, we're just getting the general shapes in place. So once you have that, tap on the little N which expands the controls and slide the opacity down to about 25%. Using a white color, if you don't have that accessible in your color palettes, just go to the value tab here at the bottom of the color controls and type 6 Fs in the hex value, which is the value for pure white. And just so you know, pure black is 6 zeros. So I'm going to use a script brush, which you can find in Procreate's default set called Calligraphy. And I'm going to create a new layer on top here, just tap the plus sign. So I'm on my new layer and I'm just going to draw over these leaves and give it a smoother outline. Now what you want to check though is that your whole shape is enclosed and that there's no gaps in the line work. And I'll show you why that's important. We'll drag the color into the shape here, which is called color drop. If there were any gaps in that line work, you can see it just fills the entire canvas. So we don't want to do that. We want to just fill that shape. So we need that outline completely joined. Do the same here now for the second leaf, and you can get a bit more organic with the shape if you like. The sketch is just a basic reference. You can elaborate on it with a few more ridges and add some detail just to add some variety. Then we're going to color drop again into the shape, and you can always refine it further as well with your eraser and smooth out anything afterwards. And now for my final leaf, I'm going to keep that quite basic and just color drop. Okay, now these parts are like the stem. They don't need to be fully connected to each leaf. This is more just a creative reference, so don't worry about being perfect with that. And I'll add a curved flourish here just for a bit of interest, and as well as a couple of circles. So the next step is to import our texture. You can use any gold foil texture if you have one already, but if you want to use the one I'm using, the download link is below. Just save it to the Photos app on your iPad. I'm going to place the texture file now. You choose Insert File and navigate to the location. It's called Foil Copper. So I'm going to place it under that shape layer, and next I'm going to tap on that shape layer and choose Select. Make sure that you have the foil layer active now, and swipe on the canvas with 3 fingers, choose Copy, then swipe with 3 fingers again and choose Paste. So doing it this way, you've preserved your foil layer if you want to use it again. So we've got the layers in gold on a separate layer now. I'll move them to the top. I've joined the other layers into a group, and I've turned the visibility off so we can see what we're working with. This gold now gives us a beautiful base, and we're going to paint on top of that. We'll start with the shadows and then we'll add some highlights, and you'll see how little we really need to do to make it come to life. So I'm going to put the colors hex code on the screen. Just remember to go to your value tab, which is in your color settings, and enter the value into the hex code area. I'll start with this dark gold and I'm going to use my green shader brush. So that's from my Texture Toolkit. If you don't have that pack, you can use something similar. So you want a brush with a bit of grain and a soft fade to the edges. So I've created a new layer on top of the gold texture and I've got my size quite high and the opacity is around 35 to 40%. For the layer, we're going to paint on top of it. So I want to add a clipping mask. And what a clipping mask does, it reveals the paint within the leaf shape area. So the mask is the shape and it's going to make things a lot easier. We can paint anywhere, so we'll only see it where the leaf shape is. You don't need to be exact with this. We're just starting by adding some variety to the color. We're going to turn down the brush size now and apply a little bit more shading down the center of the leaf. So that's going to be where the vein is, and we want some shading there so we can work with that. Next, we want to add some highlights. Create a new layer on top of this and apply that clipping mask again. I'm using a lighter color and just painting in some highlights. If you imagine a light source coming from the top left, there'd be some highlights at the top of the leaf along the edges and on the left-hand side. It could also pick up on the other side of the leaf directly opposite as well. So we just want to highlight those areas, and you could even bring it a bit into the body of the leaf as well. You can see that gold foil still coming through, so that texture brush is really nice. It just gives that effect of being solid gold, and we can enhance it even further, adding more highlights to make it more realistic. So go right along the edge without fear, because you've got your clipping mask applied, meaning it's only going to put colour where the leaf shape is, which is exactly what we want. So next I'm going to create a new layer on top and change my colour to an even lighter tone. Take the brush size down further so it becomes like more of a pencil. So this brush has that texture, but once you take the brush size down, it works like a sketching pencil. So I'll paint right in the middle and create this vein. Make sure you added a clipping mask as well to this layer. And then I'm just going to add a few little sweeping veins going out to the sides. They don't need to be super obvious or harsh, it's just a subtle hint. If you think about how a leaf looks when you see the vein running from the middle to the edges, that's kind of what we're after. The best thing about this technique is that you don't have to get it perfect. You can add layer on layer of detail, which means you can work it out and experiment in real time to just see what looks good as you go. And you can always remove anything you don't like, just going over it with a darker tone or removing it. That's why digital is so forgiving, because you can redo things like this so easily. So now we've got our general vein pattern. I'm going to go back, create a new layer above the original shading layer, and that automatically should pick up the clipping mask as well. So I'm going to use that darker tone, and this time I'm going to change the layer's blending mode to multiply. So access that by the little N icon on the layer and scroll through the list till you see multiply. I'm going to make my brush size a little bit bigger, and my opacity is still quite low. So I just want to accentuate some of these darker tones now, and using this multiply mode, you'll see it really enhances the colour and deepens that tone. So I'll darken some of those areas and add a little more contrast. And we don't want to forget about the stems, so you might want to add a little bit of variety in there as well. Now we'll increase the lighter areas. I'm going to add another layer on top of the highlights layer this time. I'm going to change my color to that light value and then set the blend mode to overlay. This will enhance those lighter areas and also make that gold tone really stand out and come to life. I want to pick up some of those mid-tones as well. So even if you're going over darker areas, it adds that variation to the color. So it starts to really look interesting now. You can go over the multiply layer a bit more as well, and that will just enhance the golden sheen. Then we're going to bring a bit of this into the stem to blend it in as well. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial today. As promised, this is the end result of how I use these gold leaves. So I created even more arrangements to sit as a border around this frame for my lettering piece. And if you like this design, stay tuned because we're going to take a look next time at how to do this 3D shadow effect to your lettering. So we'll be able to make this entire piece by the end of the next video. So take care until then, and bye for now.